Are we finally being graced with a somewhat affordable graphics card? But does affordable always equal a good deal? My friends, I'm as always late to the party when it comes to reviewing, but at least I did it. In today's review, the ZOTAC RTX 3050 Twin-Edge OC, a graphics card we've been longing for presumably smaller wallets. Albeit, these days our wallets and bank accounts need to be filled nicely in order for us to be able to afford stuff like that. Because while the MSRP, the manufacturer's suggested retail price, is at $249 for this card, the actual retail price usually is much higher. Still, there sometimes are deals to be discovered out there at MSRP. Not that often though. So it's understandable I dislike stating any prices for GPUs in my videos, since prices for those are constantly fluctuating. As history goes to show, prices usually go up. So it's almost impossible for me to name any realistic retail pricing, which also makes comparisons with other existing models quite the challenge. Meaning that in today's test I will not focus too much on pricing, but instead on offered performance compared to cards such as the RTX 2060, 2060 Super, GTX 1650 Super, and many more. A very deserved huge thank you goes out to the kind Georgios over at a hardware shop, Equipper, for making this review possible. He's been always giving it his best shot to get a hold on the hardware I need for my reviews, even in times of low supply. No, I'm not being paid to say this, I just wanted to thank him on my own terms. Hashtag not sponsored. Very well as far as accessories are concerned, as used to with graphics cards these days, almost nothing. At first glance, the Twin-Edge OC version by ZOTAC does impress in terms of build quality. While we don't experience the highest of quality here, since a plastic shroud comes into play on here, I have to respect ZOTAC for actually going with a backplate that's out of metal. ZOTAC is slapping their so-called Ice Storm 2.0 cooler onto their RTX 3050. There's nothing really out of the ordinary to see here, but it's a well-rounded twin-fan cooling solution. Just like many fellow board partners, ZOTAC too implemented their freeze fan stop feature, which automatically makes the fan stop spinning at low GPU loads and or temperatures. Once a specific temperature is reached, the fans spin back up. I love that feature when it comes to GPUs, but opinions are mixed regarding this feature. Needless to say, it can also easily be disabled. Now, since the RTX 3050 only comes with a TDP of 130 watts, the temperatures and power consumption should be totally under control. Proof for that is the single PCIe 8-pin power connector required here. Other than what AMD has done with their poorly received RX 6500 XT with an absurd VRAM capacity of 4GB in 2022, NVIDIA decided to equip their RTX 3050 with usable and fast enough 8GB of GDDR6 video memory. Furthermore, they also didn't cut back on any video outputs. So from a technical standpoint, the RTX 3050 doesn't look too bad. In-game, I managed to read out an average GPU clock of 1950 MHz. As for the test system for GPUs, I once again went with my AMD Ryzen 9 5950X CPU along with my trusty ASRock X570PG Velocita motherboard. One would assume the RTX 3050 is solely targeted at full HD 1080p gaming, but I did in fact additionally also run a whole set of benchmarks at WQHD 1440p as well. These are my benchmarks. Now, one thing I'd like to make clear fairly early on, and that is that the RTX 3050 certainly delivers. Of course, we aren't talking of any performance miracle of any sort, but it becomes clear quickly that in order to maintain a sufficient enough frame rate, one should be sticking to a screen resolution of 1080p. Needless to say, gaming at WQHD 1440p is an option, but depending on the game title and set graphics details, the amount of FPS or lack thereof might be off-putting. As a matter of fact, the RTX 3050 even is facing some difficulties in those very demanding AAA games at 1080p. To be fair though, it needs to be said that for benchmarking purposes, I for the most part set all those graphics details to their max. Maybe not necessarily advisable in that GPU performance tier. Which graphics card the RTX 3050 at the end of the day is meant to be compared with, I unfortunately can't easily answer. I don't even have a full list of comparable GPUs in my charts, since I too have my difficulties purchasing all these cards for my tests. What I didn't notice, however, is that the RTX 3050 and the older RTX 2060 here and there trade places in those gaming tests. For the most part, the RTX 2060 on average, in terms of raw performance, ends up being victorious, though. Looking at it that way, I personally would have expected a little more oomph from that RTX 3050. Nonetheless, the RTX 3050 cannot be considered a disappointing GPU by any means. In theory, on paper at least, when it comes to the MSRP, the RTX 3050, as a matter of fact, turns out to be noticeably cheaper than an RTX 2060. So in theory, a success story, if only that would also apply to our current reality we live in. In terms of noise levels, ZOTAC's cooling solution does a fine job. Under light loads, the card operates completely noiseless due to the fans being off. And even under full load or when gaming, the graphics card isn't really that audible, at least not to me. The temperatures are of completely no concern at all. Of course, you could lower those even further by manually adjusting the fan curve, but there's no need for that. Not surprising in the least is the power consumption. It's really low, and since I've been asked this a few times in the past on how I measure it, it's the power draw of the total system, with the GPU being at full load while the CPU is idling. Even though as a buyer of an RTX 3050, one would most likely focus mostly on gaming, productivity can be a purchasing argument as well to some. The RTX 3050 isn't unusable in that aspect. Still, it would be advisable to go for slightly more powerful models if possible, if you truly care about productivity performance. An RTX 3060 would catapult you into a whole different realm of performance. Unfortunately, that also kinda applies to the price. So to be perfectly honest, the RTX 3050 doesn't really blow my mind. It's a great 1080p gaming graphics card, but doesn't bring enough performance to the table to really make me truly excited about it. This, for the most part, is due to the price we consumers have to pay for such an RTX 3050. If we were able to truly purchase that GPU at MSRP, the story would look much different. But let's try to look at this situation positively, especially since GPU prices are finally starting to come down now again. Let's hope it's for real this time, and that we actually see most retailers going with decent price tags. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time.